Hi everyone, and I would like to talk about the irrigation system in the Iraqi Western Desert. As you may know that we have a series of springs in the Iraqi Western Desert, and we discovered that these springs actually being used for farming, for irrigation, for several agricultural activities, and not only for, let's say, drinking or serving the Bedouin there. So this is the main things of this presentation is explaining the irrigation system in the desert, right? Not in the floodplain or something else. So we have springs, and of course around it, it's a farming land, and of course these land being used for farming and irrigation, and of course lots of canals being dug and farming, of course some of gardens like palm trees or even fruit, vegetable and others. Yeah, so this paper actually been published as a chapter in a book, and that book actually was, I mean, meant to be, let's say, discussing the irrigation system and water management during the Islamic period. I should say that the irrigation systems around the springs in the Iraqi Western Desert um, can be dated back to the Sasanian and Islamic period. And most of these springs actually were active until Ottoman period, and then of course stopped, you know, 30 or 20 years ago because of course, the climate change and mismanagement of using the excessive using of groundwater. And now, so most of these actually spring um, dried now. So as I mentioned, we have the floodplain here, right? And then we have the Iraqi Western Desert here. And between them, we have a long line of Abu Jir Spring, Springs line. And you can see here more than 200 natural spring. These springs were running, of course, since before the Holocene until more recent time. Most of these actually spring dried before 2003 when people actually, let's say, invade the desert and dug hundred or thousand actually of um, boreholes for farming. Most of these boreholes were actually upstream, and then that led to, of course, drying most of these oases, springs, lakes, unfortunately. So yeah, it's a line of spring from a long time and being used during the Sasanian and of course Islamic period for lots of things. And I'm focusing now on irrigation. So several landscape feature being identified um, among these springs, and one of them is actually the spring canal fortresses and farm combination. So most of these, uh, let's say, springs we're having fortress and of course canal and farm. So whenever we have large spring, there should be settlements, mostly fortresses or a site, and of course canals and irrigation. So for example, this fortress here, you can see, let's say, two periods of occupation fortress. One, the large one, it is Sasanian, and that's the small one, Ottoman one. And it's close to the spring here, and then of course the canal of the spring feeding the farming land here. So a spring, a canal, and a fortress is something common in the Abu line. So, for example, this one, you can see here the line of the spring, and of course, in this photo here we have a spring, and then of course canal, and these canals actually feeding the farms here. Another example about, let's say, combination between an oasis and fortress. We have this example. You can see the fortress here, an Ottoman fortress, and of course canal, and then farming or gardening land. Here is another example. We have a fortress and a spring in this location. As you can see, the spring, and of course canal, and then farm, and we can see here a fortress, as you can see it here. Another example, which is we have a spring, and then fortress, and then a canal, and then farming land. So this is something actually normal. Yeah, and yeah, this is the example. I mean, when you can see, of course, that one is from satellite image, spring, a fortress, and then a canal, main canal, and then, of course, farming land. The other feature is that people actually use more than one spring, they combining them to irrigate their land. So in this example here, we have spring, 2, 3, and then all of them connected to form one canal, and then of course to feed a land. So sometimes one spring is not enough, then people actually connect more than one spring to irrigate their land. Another example, we have 2 springs in this case, and these 2 springs actually being combined together to farm this land. The other, let's say, feature that we found in the spring is grouping or combination between Kanat, right, and or carries, Kanat and springs. We have a good example here. We have this is, of course, Kanat system, right? And then join later a spring, and then feed this farm here, right? So this farm here actually was irrigated by a spring, and then, of course, a Kanat system. So both of them were able to irrigate this farm. The other feature is comb-shaped or broom-shaped farm. So the same, the shape of the farm is actually sometimes similar. And then most of these farms, you can see it look like a comb or a broom, right? Because of course, the topography play a significant part here. And then people dig canals whenever actually the topography allows. So this is one example. Another example, as you can see, so this is common shape of canals. Of course, canals and farms are different in the floodplain from the Western Desert, of course, because of the topography. So this is something actually common in the desert. Yeah. Another example, I think it's clear, right? Yeah, single or multi farm. Sometimes we have a spring that has one farm, right? So a spring and one farm. But sometimes we have, yeah, this is that one, of course, spring and one farm. But sometimes we have spring and multi farms here. Of course, depends on the amount of the water and the fertile land, of course. Yeah, the other feature is that we have sometimes one-sided farming land. So a spring, and then one side of the spring actually is being farming. The other side, of course, topographically difficult to farm in. But sometimes we have a spring that, of course, all the area around it is farmable, if I can say. So, for example, this one here, we have a spring in the middle, and then all of the area around it can be irrigated by that spring. From the other hand, we have a spring that only this side actually being farmed, not the other side. Yeah, thank you very much for listening.